The afternoon sun bore down on Mesa Street in El Paso, Texas, turning the asphalt into a shimmering mirage. From a distance, the Franklin Mountains seemed to ripple and breathe in the heat haze. It was Tuesday, June 14th, 2005, a day already pushing past 98 degrees before noon. Inside the cooled quiet of Weber Commercial Properties, 42-year-old Douglas Hamilton was finishing paperwork. He'd told his secretary he planned to step out for a quick business lunch. Nothing unusual for a man whose days revolved around client meetings and property showings. Douglas was well known in El Paso's small but steady business scene. A real estate broker with 15 years of steady success, he'd built his reputation on firm handshakes and community trust. He dressed like a man who took quiet pride in his work. Pressed khakis, a pale blue shirt rolled neatly at the sleeves, and a pair of worn but polished loafers. His secretary, Maria Vargas, a loyal employee in her late 50s who had been with him since he opened the office in 1998, noticed something different that morning. Douglas seemed distracted. He checked his watch over and over, made a few closed-door calls, and spoke more abruptly than usual when she offered to move his afternoon appointments. At 11:45 a.m., he grabbed his familiar burgundy briefcase, scuffed from years of use, and told Maria he'd be back by 2. She remembered how he avoided eye contact as he said it. Moments later, the door chimed behind him, and the low hum of his silver 2003 Honda Accord faded into the distance. That was the last time anyone saw Douglas Hamilton alive. When evening came and he hadn't returned, Maria grew uneasy. Calls to his cell phone went unanswered. By nightfall, she reached out to Jennifer Hamilton, Douglas's wife. The concern in Jennifer's voice was immediate, almost instinctive. Her husband was reliable to a fault, she told Maria. He always called if he was running late. Always. Jennifer, a 39-year-old elementary school teacher and mother of 2 teenage boys, called police around 8 p.m. But the dispatcher's tone was polite and measured, suggesting that grown men sometimes just need space. Still, Jennifer knew better. Something was wrong. The next morning at 7:32 a.m., a maintenance worker phoned 911. He'd found a car at the Desert Sands Motor Lodge, a long-abandoned motel on the eastern edge of El Paso, near the Horizon city line. The motel had been closed since 2002, its windows boarded, its sign dark and broken, the once bright neon letters now rusted beyond recognition. And yet there it was. Douglas Hamilton's silver Honda Accord, parked crookedly in front of what used to be room 14. The driver's door hung open. The keys were still in the ignition. On the passenger seat sat his briefcase, untouched. His phone, a simple flip model, lay face down on the floorboard, its battery long dead. There were no signs of a struggle, no damage, no clear indication of what had happened. Only a car left behind in a place no legitimate business meeting could ever take place. Detective Raymond Kobayashi arrived at the scene just after 8 a.m. He was a veteran of the El Paso Police Department, 26 years on the force, and from the moment he stepped into that sun-bleached parking lot, he felt it. That familiar, heavy certainty that this case wasn't going to end neatly. As the investigation unfolded, Kobayashi began with Douglas's finances, a routine first step that quickly raised red flags. What he found was startling. Douglas had 3 separate bank accounts, none of which his wife knew about. The first, opened at a small West Side credit union in 2001, showed steady deposits. A few hundred here, a few thousand there, like clockwork. The second, across the state line in Las Cruces, New Mexico, saw much larger withdrawals, sometimes 10 or 15,000 at a time. But the third account was the one that truly caught Kobayashi's attention. It was nearly empty, holding just $87, but its history revealed that over $300,000 had passed through it in just 4 years. When the detective met with Jennifer Hamilton 3 days after her husband vanished, he brought this information with him. He watched her closely as they sat in her small living room, her hands trembling, fingers locked tightly together in her lap. She shook her head slowly as he spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. She had no idea any of those accounts existed. Jennifer Hamilton knew about their joint checking account, their savings, the college funds for their two sons, Marcus and Tyler. But these other accounts, she had never heard of them. Her voice cracked when she asked what the money was for. Detective Kobayashi could only tell her the truth. He didn't know yet, but he was going to find out. The answer came from an unlikely source, a bartender named Louis Santoro, who worked at a dimly lit dive on the south side called the Brass Rail. When Kobayashi showed him Douglas Hamilton's photo, Louis recognized him instantly. "Yeah," he said, "that guy was in here a lot." Douglas had been a regular, mostly on Tuesdays, Thursdays, sometimes Saturdays. He always sat at the back tables, not for drinks, for cards. But these weren't the friendly, low-stakes poker nights you play for bragging rights. These were high-stakes games where the buy-in started at $5,000. Cash only. As Lewis talked, Kobayashi filled page after page in his notebook. He was learning that El Paso had an entire underground gambling circuit hiding in plain sight. A world that coexisted with legitimate businesses, fueled by debts, desperation, and the illusion of luck. Douglas Hamilton, it turned out, had a serious gambling problem. According to Lewis, some nights Douglas would win big. Other nights, he'd lose everything. And in the last 6 months before his disappearance, things had gotten worse. Douglas was anxious, restless, asking about loans, extensions, and extra time to make things right. There were rumors, whispered quietly, even in that noisy bar, that Douglas owed money to people you didn't want to owe money to. Serious money. The kind of debt that doesn't come with reminders or grace periods. When Kobayashi broke the news to Jennifer a second time, this time with a female officer present, he watched her entire understanding of her marriage collapse right in front of him. She sat motionless, staring at the evidence spread across her kitchen table. The hidden accounts, the debts, the gambling. Over and over, she repeated the same words. "I had no idea. I had no idea." Her sons, Marcus and Tyler, were at school. Kobayashi was grateful for that small mercy. Because soon, they too would have to face the truth, that their father wasn't the man they thought he was. The discovery of Douglas's gambling debts should have given detectives a clear path to follow. Instead, it opened a door into something far darker. On the fifth night after Douglas vanished, at 2:15 a.m., the phone rang inside the Hamilton home. Jennifer was awake, as she had been every night since he disappeared, sitting in the kitchen with cold coffee and racing thoughts. She lunged for the receiver, but the voice on the other end wasn't her husband. It was mechanical, distorted, almost inhuman. The words came slowly, deliberate, and cold. "We have your husband," it said. "He owes money to the wrong people. You have 72 hours to get $150,000 in cash, or you will never see him again." Then the line went dead. Jennifer's hands shook so badly she dropped the phone. Her first call was to Detective Kobayashi, jolting him awake from the shallow sleep of a man who'd been running on fumes. By dawn, the Hamilton home was filled with federal agents. The FBI had long been watching the El Paso Juarez corridor, a region where cartel influence seeped quietly across the border. Special Agent Patricia Doyle, a sharp-eyed organized crime investigator in her early 40s, listened to the ransom recording 6 times before speaking. Her conclusion was blunt. This has all the markings of a cartel kidnapping. In 2005, Ciudad Juarez was descending into chaos. Rival organizations fighting for smuggling routes, while El Paso stood on the edge of that violence, close enough to feel its tremors, but still insulated by law and jurisdiction. If Douglas Hamilton had crossed paths with the wrong gambling network, one connected to cartel interests, then this was no longer a domestic disappearance. It was international. Agent Doyle had Jennifer's phone line tapped and briefed her on what to do if the kidnappers called again. Keep them talking, ask for proof of life, try to confirm Douglas was still alive. But that second call never came. 72 hours passed, then 96. Then a week. Jennifer had already withdrawn every dollar she could, even taken a loan against their house. The $150,000 sat in a black duffel bag in her closet, waiting for instructions that would never come. Agent Doyle told her it wasn't unusual. Sometimes ransom calls were distractions, sometimes they were scams, and sometimes the victim was already gone long before the first call was even made. At first, Louis Santoro was cooperative. He met with Kobayashi again a week later, answering questions honestly, if nervously. His eyes kept drifting to the door. His hands fidgeted. Kobayashi gave him a card and told him to call if he remembered anything else. That was June 20th, 2005. A week later, Louis Santoro didn't show up for work. At first, his boss, a grizzled ex-boxer named Frank Murphy, wasn't worried. Bartenders missed shifts. It happened. But after 2 days without a word, Murphy drove to Louis's apartment. The neighbor, Rosa Fernandez, said she hadn't seen him in several nights, just heard heavy footsteps on the stairs in the middle of the night. More than one person. Then, silence. When officers entered the apartment, it looked almost normal to